मीडिया वेव्स के प्लेटफॉर्म तो खबरां दा लेखा जोखा प्रोग्राम के अंतर्गत आप सबका स्वागत है जी आया नु।
Khabran Da Lekha Jokha program June 11, 2024 has been sponsored by Hanif Litigation. Any criminal or regulatory law matters, contact Hanif Litigation lawyer Shahid Hanif 604-626-3144. Surrey police saga over. Mayor accepts judicial review decision. The years-long controversy over the transition to a civic police force in Surrey is seemingly over. Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke seems to have given up in her bid to keep the RCMP as the police force of jurisdiction. In Monday night's City Council meeting, the Mayor explained she has accepted the judicial review decision which ruled the province was right to force the transition to the Surrey Police Service. After campaigning against the creation of the SPS, Locke shared Monday that she and Council will continue to keep an eye on the transition, including the associated cost. It is important to note that the findings from the judicial review did reveal some concerning information that requires further and comprehensive review, Locke said. The apparent resolution is likely a relief to Brian's of the National Police Federation, the organization that represents RCMP members, many of whom felt they were living in purgatory as the saga played out. We've always said that this is a decision that should be about public safety. The residents of Surrey having their say in public safety never should be politicized, Suave said on Monday. Media license SPS Ian McDonald shared that there were 225 SPS officers deployed over 8 units as of Tuesday. The Surrey Police Service takes over the police of jurisdiction in Surrey on November 29, and McDonald explained the police agency is working to hire more staff and attain more resources, so it's ready for that date. We certainly have plans and a lot of interest from officers from across the country in joining SPS, he said. Some of the obstacles that are front of mind for applicants have been removed, so we have seen an uptick in interest. McDonald explained that while the SPS will take over as the force of jurisdiction come the end of November, the transition competition date is still a couple years out. From November 29, Phase 2 until the completion date, the RCMP will be in a support role. They will continue to be valuable partners, and through the collaboration between the two organizations, that's how we'll bring about and maintain public safety and service. As we gain more police staff, the RCMP in Surrey demobilize their resources can be sent to their other detachments in other cities.
ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਕਈ ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਗਾ ਹੈ, ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਦੇ ਤੇ 2 ਕਦਮ ਅਗਾਂਹ ਤੇ 1 ਕਦਮ ਪਿਛਾਂਹ ਵਾਲਾ ਸਰੀ ਦੀ ਪੁਲਿਸ ਦੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਸਰੀ ਦੀ ਮੇਅਰ ਬ੍ਰੈਂਡਾ ਲੌਕ ਨੇ ਆਖਰਕਾਰ ਮੰਨ ਲਿਆ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਾਰਗੁਜ਼ਾਰੀ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁਣ ਅੜਿੱਕਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣਨਗੇ। ਪਰ ਹਾਂ, ਇਸ ਗੱਲ ਦਾ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਗੱਲ ਨੂੰ ਰੱਖਿਆ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਨਿਗਾਹ ਰੱਖਾਂਗੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੌਂਸਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਖਰਚਾ ਕੀ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਔਰ ਪਾਰਦਰਸ਼ਤਾ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ, ਟ੍ਰਾਂਸਪੇਰੈਂਸੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੇ ਨਿਵਾਸੀਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਮਿਲੇ।
BC's next massive earthquake could be more dramatic than the first thought. For decades now, you've been told it's coming, a devastating super quake along British Columbia's south coast. And new research suggests it could be even more dramatic than expected when it does eventually hit. Scientists are getting much more detailed data about a major fault along the west coast, stretching from California to BC. The newly published information comes from a 2021 ocean expedition that used sound waves to explore and map the 1,000-kilometer Cascadian subduction zone, including a segment along Washington and southern Vancouver Island that has caught the attention of seismologists like John Cassidy at National Resource Canada. The research has shown various segments, which is important for improving our estimates of what we can expect during a future subduction earthquake. One of these big magnitude 9.0 quakes, we've known about it now for about 30 years, and we can estimate the shaking, but now we are getting into a lot more of the details. That includes the geological features of the segment adjustment to BC. When it has been revealed, the edges of the tectonic plates are smoother, flatter, and shallower than other areas. Along a fault where movement is typically measured in centimeters annually, Cassidy says that segment has the potential of a massive slip when built-up stresses eventually release. Cassidy says the new data will help refine hazard models and eventually improve building and bridge codes. The information will also be used by emergency managers. Of course, this fault is offshore, so that's important to remember, he added. It's about 75 kilometers of the west coast, but it is a fault that continues beneath us, beneath Vancouver Island and beneath the lower mainland, at about 60 or 70 kilometers beneath Vancouver, for example, he said. The research does not help seismologists pinpoint when a massive earthquake will strike, but Cassidy reminds us that the west coast is very much at risk. What we've known for the past 30 years is that we live in the subduction zone where an ocean plate is slowly being pushed beneath British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, and parts of Northern California. The last quake in the range that occurred along the west coast was the year 1700, as deduced by the geological information, tsunami records from Japan, and oral traditions from indigenous communities. There's been a lot of research that has confirmed we've actually had 19 of these major earthquakes during the past 10,000 years. They are rare events, roughly every 400 or 500 years, sometimes 250 years, sometimes 850 years, so it's quite a range, Cassidy explained. But with the last major earthquake striking the region 324 years ago, seismologists suggest coastal BC could be due for the next one at any time.
ਪੱਛਮੀ ਤਟ ਦਾ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 1000 ਕਿਲੋਮੀਟਰ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਢਾ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੈਲੀਫੋਰਨੀਆ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਵੈਨਕੂਵਰ ਆਈਲੈਂਡ ਤੱਕ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਲੋਅਰ ਮੇਨਲੈਂਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੱਡੇ ਅਰਥਕੁਇਕ ਜਿਹਦਾ 9 ਡਿਗਰੀ ਮੈਗਨੀਟਿਊਡ ਤੱਕ ਅਸਰ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ, ਉਸਦੇ ਚਰਚੇ ਛਿੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਨੇ। ਤੇ ਯਾਦ ਰਹੇ ਇਹ ਅਰਥਕੁਇਕ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ 1700 ਜਿਹੜੀ ਈਸਵੀ ਆ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਦਾ ਦਰਜ ਹੋਣਾ। ਔਰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਵਕਤਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 250 ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 850 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਕਫਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਵੈਰੀ ਕਰਦਾ, ਕਦੇ 250 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਅਰਥਕੁਇਕ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆ। ਔਰ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਜੇ ਉਹ ਸਮਾਂਬੰਦੀ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਹੁਣ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਟਾਈਮ ਹੈ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ।
Investigation into volleyball-sized rock that smashed through windshield in Burnaby continues. The driver struck by what the RCMP called a volleyball-sized rock last week on Highway 1 in Burnaby remains in critical condition. It was last Thursday when the rock went flying through the windshield of a white sedan, striking the driver before blowing out the back window. Little is being disclosed publicly about the investigation. However, BC Highway Patrol Corporal Melissa Jongema says that collision analysts are still trying to understand what happened. The file is still open and under investigation. When a file is open, criminal charges may be considered. If there is evidence of a criminal offense, it is too early to determine that. The number one question yet to be answered is where the rock came from. Mounties had previously confirmed it couldn't have been dropped off an overpass because there isn't one in the area. Last week, the RCMP said it believed the rock came from a passing vehicle. At this moment, the size of the rock is not being declared. At this time, the RCMP has refused, due to the nature of the incident, to give any further information.
ਅੱਛਾ, ਇਹ ਬੜੀ ਹੈਰਾਨੀਜਨਕ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਕੋਈ ਓਵਰਪਾਸ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ, ਕੋਈ ਪਤਾ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੱਲ ਰਿਹਾ। ਐਡੇ ਵੱਡੇ ਪੱਥਰ ਦਾ ਗੱਡੀ ਦੇ ਸ਼ੀਸ਼ੇ 'ਚ ਵੱਜਣਾ ਔਰ ਡਰਾਈਵਰ ਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਖਮੀ ਕਰਕੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਸ਼ੀਸ਼ੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਦੀ ਨਿਕਲ ਜਾਣਾ। ਔਰ ਇਹਦੇ ਚਰਚੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਨਾ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਹਫ਼ਤੇ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਡੀ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ, ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਹਾਈਵੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਨਸੀਡੈਂਟ ਆ ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਲਕਿ ਕਈਆਂ ਲਈ ਜਾਨਲੇਵਾ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਹਾਈਵੇ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਸਪੀਡ ਆ ਉਹ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਮਾਤਰਾ 'ਚ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਇਹਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਸਿਨੈਰੀਓ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਵੀ ਹੋ ਸਕਦਾ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਸਵਾਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਵੇਂ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਮਾਲ ਵਗੈਰਾ ਲੱਦਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਡਿੱਗਿਆ ਹੋਵੇ, ਪਰ ਅਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਕੁਝ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੱਲ ਸਕਿਆ।
Canada Border Services Agency workers reached tentative deal union. More than 9,000 Canada Border Services Agency CBSA workers have reached a tentative agreement, their union says. Workers were initially set to start job action on June 7, but it was postponed after an agreement was reached to extend mediation talks. The union then set a new strike deadline for Friday. Our bargaining team has been working around the clock to secure the best contract for our members. Sharon De Sousa, National President of Public Service Alliance of Canada stated in a release, "This is a well-deserved victory for our members at CBSA who safeguard our nation's borders and ensure the safety and security of all Canadians."
ਟਲੀ ਗਿਆ ਸ਼ਨਾ ਜੀ।
ਹਾਂਜੀ।
ਆਖਰ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਸੀ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਵੀਕਐਂਡ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਇਹਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਅਸਰ ਪੈ ਗਿਆ, ਪਰ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਦਾ ਸਮਾਂ ਬੰਦੀ ਵਧਣ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਹੁਣ ਇਹ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਆਈਆਂ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਆਪਣਾ ਬਾਰਡਰ ਸਰਵਿਸਿਜ਼ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ CBSA ਵਾਲੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਯੂਨੀਅਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਤਕਰੀਬਨ 9000 ਮੈਂਬਰ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਬਣ ਗਿਆ ਜੀ, ਡੀਲ ਬਣ ਗਈ। ਵੈਸੇ 2 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਬਿਨਾਂ ਕੰਟਰੈਕਟ ਦੇ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ।
Hockey player's sex assault case back in court in August. The sexual assault case of 5 former members of Canada's World Junior Hockey team is set to return to court in August. The case of Dylan Dupe, Carter Hart, Michael McLeod, Cal Fute, and Alex Fomenton is due back on August 13 to potentially set a date for trial. A judicial pre-trial, which is closed to the public, is planned for July, and some hearings have also been scheduled for September. The 5 players were charged earlier this year in connection with an alleged sexual assault at a London, Ontario hotel in 2018. They are all charged with sexual assault, though McLeod also faces an additional charge of sexual assault for being a party to the offense. The players have chosen to be tried before a judge and jury.
ਜੂਨੀਅਰ ਵਰਲਡ ਹਾਕੀ ਟੀਮ ਦੇ 6 ਮੈਂਬਰਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਦੋਸ਼ ਲੱਗੇ ਸਨ, ਆਸ਼ਨਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਖਿਡਾਰੀ ਵਰਗ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਇਹ ਬੜੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਸ਼ੌਕਿੰਗ ਵੀ ਸੀ ਔਰ ਚਿੰਤਾਜਨਕ ਵੀ ਸੀਗੇ। ਔਰ ਇਹਦੀ ਹੁਣ ਕਾਨੂੰਨੀ ਪਹਿਰੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੋਏ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਕਿਤਾਬ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਉਹਦੀਆਂ ਡੇਟਸ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਨਸ਼ਰ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਨੇ, ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕੇਸ ਦੇ ਕੀ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਨਿਕਲਦੇ ਨੇ।
Edmonton Oilers lose Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Finals to Florida Panthers 4-1. The Florida Panthers have held serve in the Stanley Cup Final. The Panthers go to Edmonton with a 2-0 series lead after beating the Oilers 4-1 on Monday. The high-flying Oilers managed just one total goal in the 2 games in Sunrise, Florida. Panthers forward Evan Rodriguez broke a 1-1 tie in Game 2 early in the 3rd and then added an insurance marker on the power play. The later goal ended the Oilers' successful penalty kill streak at 34. Matthias Ekholm opened the scoring for Edmonton on his team's first shot on goal midway through the first period, beating Panthers goalie Sergei Barbovsky for the first time this series after the Panthers won 3-0 in Game 1. Florida's Nico Mikkola tied at midway through the second. Aaron Ekblad added an empty netter for Florida. The Oilers lost forward Warren Foegele after he was given a game misconduct in the first period for a knee-on-knee hit on Eetu Luastranian. Oilers defenseman Donald Nurse saw little ice time after he appeared to injure his hip following a hit by Rodriguez in the first. The Panthers meanwhile lost captain Alexander Bakhov after he was hurt on penalized high hit by Leon Braisaitl in the 3rd period. Game 3 is Thursday at Edmonton's Rogers Arena.
ਦੂਜੀ ਗੇਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਆਸ਼ਨਾ ਜੀ ਫਿਰ ਤੇਲ ਵਾਲੇ ਤੇਲੀ ਹਾਰ ਗਏ ਹੈ। ਪਰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਬੁੱਧਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਮਾਫ ਕਰਨਾ ਵੀਰਵਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੇਮ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਐਡਮਿੰਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦੇ ਕੀ ਰਿਜ਼ਲਟ ਨਿਕਲਦੇ ਨੇ। ਪਰ 2 ਖੇਡਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਟੀਮ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਵਾਇਲਰਸ ਹਾਰ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੈ।
UN says Israeli forces Palestinian armed groups may have committed war crimes in deadly raid. The UN Human Rights Office is citing possible war crimes by Israeli forces and Palestinian armed groups in connection with a deadly raid by Israeli forces that freed 4 hostages over the weekend and killed hundreds of Palestinians. Office spokesman Jeremy Lawrence expressed concerns about possible violations of rules of proportionally distinction and precaution by the Israeli forces in Saturday's raids at the urban Nusayrat refugee camp. Palestinian officers say at least 274 Palestinians, including dozens of women and children, were killed in the operation.
Gaza ਤੋਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਫਲਸਤੀਨ ਤੇ ਇਜ਼ਰਾਈਲ ਦੀਆਂ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਚਿੰਤਾਜਨਕ ਦੀਆਂ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਨਾਲ ਦੀ ਨਾਲ ਇੰਨੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਡੀ ਮਾਤਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਮੌਤਾਂ ਨੇ ਨਾ, ਉਹਦਾ ਠੱਲ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਪੈ ਰਹੀ।
Mhm.
ਔਰ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸਵਾਲ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਉੱਠ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਛਡਾਉਣ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰਕਿਰਿਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੰਨੇ ਮਾਰੇ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਹਿਸਾਬ ਕਿਤਾਬ।
इसी के साथ हमें दीजिएगा इजाजत। खबरों दा लेखा जोखा प्रोग्राम से until next time, goodbye.